What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today we're having a look at the brand new treasure map against Pizarro, where you can super evolve Kuzan. So Kuzan is like the Intrusion battle boss, and then you've got the final boss in the TM itself being the Pizarro with the devil fruit, of course. And remember, in this event, you can go ahead and super evolve the Kuzan from Pirate King Adventures. The Kuzan doesn't receive that big of a buff from the super evolution. He receives a couple of key things which makes him slightly better, but overall it's just a slightly better version with a better artwork, I must admit. This artwork of this free-to-play unit is actually quite good, so big fan of that one. His secondary class is Shooter, which works well with the new Kobe, of course, who can change characters who have that secondary class of Shooter into a fighter character with his abilities. So let's go ahead and jump into things here. We will be talking about my personal teams in this event, and in the first team we're going to have a look at is the Pizarro without the devil fruit activated. So it's weird. Pizarro is actually two bosses. This is the first one here. Now in this quest, the first boss, of course, everyone receives cooldowns, so you don't have to worry about that. But in terms of the gimmicks for this fight, they want you to use Legend Hawkins with his super evolution. The reason for that is because he has really good stall mechanics, he can tank hits, he's able to like increase the attack timer of the opponent so they basically don't do damage to you, and you basically stall out the gimmicks that he inflicts. But in order to get through it a little bit faster, I'm going to be using this team here where we have the 6-star Luffy, 6-star Psy Gear 5 Luffy, and what we are aiming to do here is to get his cooldown ready to go. Ideally we have Carrot and Wanda, we can use their special twice to get -4 turns of cooldown. We have the ship to give us -2 turns of cooldown. We have the Brûlé support on Luffy to give him -2 turns of cooldown, so he should be ready by the time we reach the last stage. And then we can use his EX Super, we can use his special ability, which removes 1 turn of all enemy negative or beneficial effects on their side of the field, which is able to remove the enemy's effect of damage limiter, so allowing you to remove that. Of course, Luffy gives you the full board of slots, and then when you kill the Pizarro boss, he does like 80,000 damage to you. But of course, we're going to have a secondary Luffy, which is still going to have the revive mechanic active. So we have one is Gear 5, one is the base Luffy, and then when we kill Pizarro, he will probably kill us if we don't have enough HP, and then we can just revive and then win off of that. So that's the way that you do it. You either apply the Hawkins strategy and just stall him out, and then use the defensive effects to kind of tank the hits, or we're going to use Luffy to kind of just get around the gimmicks altogether. The secondary battle boss is against San Juan Wolf, and with this fight, they want you to use the Shooter team, ideally with Versus Kid. So Versus Kid, his captain ability says if we've got 4 or more shooters, we can avoid bind by 10 turns, which is very, very key here. They really want you to use the unevolved Kuzan as well for this. So the Kuzan, the free-to-play one from PKA, he does have the crewmate ability to make deck slots beneficial, which is what you're inflicted with on this final stage. Kuzan can also remove bind, so if you're not running a full team of shooters, then you can still use Kuzan to get around that. You also have to deal with defense up and Rainbow Shield, which of course the Kid is able to deal with. And then we also have the supports of Akainu attached to Kid, which can give a full board of strength slots, as well as giving our strength units a 1.5 times attack boost. Of course, we're going to use Kid's special, which is going to give us the paralyzed conditional boost and a bunch of the chain buffs. So that's pretty much what we're doing here. We do have the support of Lucci attached to Izo and Okiku, which can give our shooter characters a 1.5 times color affinity. One thing to note is that I do believe there are some mob characters that are surrounding San Juan Wolf. Kid, when you use his special, will wipe out those mobs that surround him. So they really want you to use him. If you just use a friend captain, that's more than enough to get through this, as long as you have the right characters to support these units with. Next one is going to be against Vasco Shot. So Vasco Shot is what they want you to do. What the recommended team here is to use the new Versus Shanks as well as Dorian Broggy. Very, very easy fight. Not a lot of gimmicks. There is 9 turns of Despair, which Shanks deals with his captain ability. Then there's also 7 turns of Special Bind, 7 turns of Burn. Dory and Broggy remove both of those gimmicks, as well as providing you with an attack boost. He does change some slots around for us as well. So Shanks and Dory Broggy are the easy ways to get around it. Of course, if you don't have these units, then you do have to approach this in a different manner. 7 turns of Special Bind is kind of annoying. I think a lot of people may have to use unboosted units in order to get around this if you don't have some of these key characters. Removing Despair isn't that tricky. Despair is quite common to remove, and there's a lot of other captains you could also use that can deal with that Despair effect pretty effectively. Alternatively, what you could do is you could just use like Dory Broggy Friend Captain, and he can allow you to remove the Special Bind, because as a captain he does remove Special Bind off of himself. So you could potentially run it that way too, or you could use a Shanks Friend Captain if you don't have your own one, or if you have Shanks but no Dory Broggy, you can use a Friend Captain Dory Broggy and your own Shanks as your own captain. That will all work. All of those kind of combinations will work, because these are the 2 units that you need. The rest of the characters are basically supporter units here. The Vista is here for wave clearing for the first 2 stages. Vivi and the Fugar character are just here because they're slashes that are boosted in this TM. So yeah, not a very complex fight. So moving on to the Shiryu fight, this is the final of the Battle Rush bosses. Now in this fight, what they are recommending you to do is to use some of the latest batch characters, which is like the new Legend Garp, and I think the Sword unit might be here. I think the Sword unit might be recommended for the Intrusion and the final boss as well. But with this team, what we're doing here is I'm personally going to be using Garp as a friend captain, because Garp just does so much against Shiryu. So the fact that you are stunned, all of your bottom row characters, or your bottom row and your middle row, are stunned. So you need to have an effect that can deal damage to you in order to get out of that stun. So yeah, you could run a character with a support that does HP reduction. But the other thing is that Garp is so good for this, because he, with his special, will do a 95% health cut to your crew, so that deals with the stun. Garp also changes all your slots into matching, or he changes them into recovery and tandem, which deals with the slot attack down against type slots that's inflicted, and Garp also removes 10 turns of defense up. So Garp deals with over half of the gimmicks by himself, and then in order to deal with the Rainbow Shield and the paralysis, we're going to be using Nami, and she just deals with that pretty effectively. Because we are inflicted with paralysis, she's going to completely remove that, fully charge her special, allowing us to use her special to remove that Rainbow Shield. The rest of the characters on this crew though are basically just supporter units, nothing too major. The Brook is here to wave clear the first 2 stages, but we're mainly focusing on using Garp and Nami special to give us a little bit of damage, dealing with the gimmicks, and then killing Shiryu that way. We have color affinity with Koala if we need it. We've got an orb boost / attack booster with the Sanji if we need it. Yeah, this team seems relatively okay. It's not going to be my most favorite team to use, because we do have to use a hybrid captain, of course, but I think there should be plenty of Garps available in this TM to use, so that's what our approach is going to be for this team against Shiryu. And now we get to the final boss against Avalo Pizarro with his Devil Fruit activated. So with this fight, I'm going to be using the brand new Kobe that I was lucky enough to pull from the TM. But what I will say is that definitely using Friend Kobe is going to be, the way to go in this TM. We'll kind of break down how this team actually works. So on stage 2, your row 2, so your middle row is inflicted with Bind for 9 turns. So with Sockets, that immediately goes down to 6. You also get normal attacks only. There is an Intimidate, so any attack or orb boost gets -1 turns, and then you're not allowed to inflict any debuff except for defense down. And then whenever you kill the enemy on stage 2, you're dealt a 99% health cut. So the way that we approach this is we are going to be using the Friend Captain superclass and the Friend Captain special, because what that will do is it activates a territory special, which will then immediately trigger Kobe's Captain effect to remove the bind and special bind by 6 turns. So that's just basically all we really need to do. Superclass, we use Kobe special, and then we can use Hawkins special as well if we need it, in order just to get through. And remember that when we activate all of Kobe's effects, we will get end of turn healing. So whenever the enemy will do a 99% health cut to us, the end of turn healing will still trigger when we move on to the next stage. So we are going to have a little bit of HP left to play with. When we get to the final stage, we get 9 turns of attack down, 10 turns of despair. Those 2 things are pretty nasty. So the way that we're getting around that is we're going to have the Luffy here. This free-to-play Luffy, he does have level limit break, and I did level limit break him just for this team, so you can obviously purchase the copies for this Luffy from the treasure map exchange. When you get him to level limit break 5, his special ability changes to get 5 turns of attack down, bind removal, and despair removal, and he changes, he gets rid of 5 turns of the recovery slots to do damage to you as well, which is kind of neat. Gives you a full board of matching slots, and 2.5 times orb boost for 2 turns. A very, very solid free-to-play unit. Remember that you do need like one of the key characters in order to trigger Kobe's superclass effect, and Luffy is one of those units. We do also have the supports of Law attached to Beppo. We have the support of Momo attached to Luffy, so that already removes 4 turns of attack down by itself. Luffy removes a further 5 turns, totaling to 9. And then we have the Despair to deal with, of course, so it goes down to 7 with our sockets. We do have Luffy to remove 5 turns of that, so that's already down to 2. And then Kobe, with the support of the Opera, has the ability to remove a further 2 turns of the Despair. So that removes all of the Despair for us. Kobe special will remove 2 turns of damage immunity on the enemy side of the field as well. So the only key characters that are kind of needed are the 2 Kobes, at least for this team, and then the level limit break Luffy. The rest of the characters are pretty open to whatever you want to do, so that does make things a little bit easier. But of course, if you don't have your own version of Kobe, you do need to have Kobe on your team to make things a lot easier. So it means that you will have to use a lot of these slots to deal with other things. But I will say this deck's free-to-play Luffy exceptionally well, really, really good in this final fight against Pizarro. And then we have the Intrusion fight versus Kuzan, and we'll approach this one in a really weird manner as well, because Kobe, we all know that he does have the ability to remove Special Bind when he triggers his Captain ability. The problem is, in this Intrusion fight, is you're inflicted with 7 turns of Special Bind. It's really, really annoying. So the thing is we can use Kobe's super type to remove Special Bind on himself completely, but even if we use the special of Kobe to then trigger his Captain effect to remove 6 turns of Special Bind and Bind, your crew will still have 1 turn of Special Bind. It's really annoying. So we do have the Garp support on Kobe. It does remove a further 3 turns of Special Bind, so you're not going to have to worry about that at all. Some other key supports that are triggering on stage 2 is we have the Brook support on Nami Karina. That will remove 2 turns of defense up. We will be using Luffy special on this stage, and Luffy will trigger the Ace support, which removes a further 2 turns of defense up, which means that we can save the Hina special for the final stage. So we're using Luffy special, we're using Kobe special, we're going to be using Nami special. Nami is also pretty important from Nami Karina because it does remove 6 turns of Rainbow Shield and 6 turns of Resilience, all of which is on stage 2. So we have Kobe super type, Kobe special, Luffy special, Nami special, and then that will deal with stage 2. It deals with all of the gimmicks and gives us a pretty sizable damage output. We move into the final stage, and there's not as many gimmicks on the final stage to deal with, but they are still present. So of course we're going to have 2 Kobes, so we can activate the secondary Kobe superclass, and then that special again will remove the bind, or remove a ton of bind for us at least. And then we have the attack down to deal with, which is why we also have Hina. Hina deals with the attack down and the defense up on the final stage. The 7 turns of Threshold, which is why we have this Usopp on the crew. He does remove 7 turns of Threshold by himself, which is fantastic. And because we've activated the secondary Kobe, we will activate Territory to overwrite the enemy's territory. There is an interrupt. If you activate an effect that removes bind, then they're going to remove all your beneficial effects and also give you 9 turns of despair. So you don't want to deal with that. So ideally use Kobe, right? Because whenever you activate a special ability that does territory, it will trigger the captain ability to remove bind and special bind. So if you have your Kobes, of course, you can help get around those gimmicks. And you know, even though now that I'm looking at it, the way that it kind of works, because we are using 2 Kobes, both of which are going to be activating simultaneously, so we technically remove 12 turns of bind and special bind whenever we're activating that special. So technically on this team, Garp is not required, but of course if you only have 1 Kobe, trying to find a way to put a special bind support on your crew is going to be pretty vital to get through this content effectively. So that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you so much for watching the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Other than that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.